At first glance, a royal harem was a symbol of beauty, desire, and privilege. Silken curtains, golden lanterns, scented air, and women dressed in jewels. It looked like a paradise carved out of fantasy. But behind the veil of luxury often hid a system more dangerous, more controlled, and more psychologically disturbing than any battlefield. In some empires, the royal harem was not a sanctuary, it was a slow-burning torture chamber, ruled not by swords, but by silence, fear, and manipulation. Let's begin in the heart of the Ottoman Empire, inside the legendary Topkapi Palace, home to one of the most powerful yet invisible institutions in world history. The imperial harem. The Ottoman sultans were not merely rulers. They were gods on earth, their word was law, and their desires shaped the fate of thousands. Inside the harem, hundreds of women lived cloistered away from the outside world. Some were kidnapped as young girls. Others were gifted by foreign leaders. A few came willingly, chasing a dream of becoming queen. But once they crossed the threshold, there was no turning back. At the top sat the valid sultan, the mother of the reigning sultan who ruled the harem with terrifying authority. Below her were ranks of concubines, favorites, and attendants. Each woman was assigned a title, a room, and a strict behavioral code. Stepping out of line, even smiling at the wrong person, could result in isolation, starvation, or worse. It wasn't uncommon for the sultan to ignore hundreds of women for months, only to suddenly favor one. That woman would then be elevated to unimaginable power, gifted silks, slaves, and gold, while the others watched in silence, boiling with jealousy and rage. This toxic hierarchy created an emotional battlefield where every look, every word, every silence was a weapon. Alliances formed, spies emerged. Poisoned perfumes, whispered lies, and silent sabotage became daily occurrences. The women were not allowed to leave, write letters, or speak to outsiders. Their entire identity was reduced to their proximity to the sultan's body. But the true horror began when power shifted unexpectedly. One infamous example is the story of Ibrahim the Mad Ant, Ottoman sultan whose paranoia and insanity transformed the harem into a living hell. Obsessed with betrayal and fearful of being overthrown, he ordered that 280 concubines be tied in velvet sacks and drowned in the Bosphorus, simply because one woman had been accused of infidelity. No trial, no proof, just mass murder as a performance of power. Survivors in the palace whispered of the screams echoing across the water that night. After that massacre, the halls of the harem grew quieter. Not peaceful, just colder. Women began to fake illnesses to avoid being noticed. Others self-harmed to escape being summoned. One historian wrote, "They lived not for love, but to avoid death unnoticed." Even those who became favorites weren't safe. Many sultans developed obsessive fixations, forcing women to maintain unnatural appearances. Some were made to gain weight, others to remain childlike. Refusal wasn't an option. Punishment ranged from beatings to public stripping before lower-ranking concubines. The paradox was terrifying. The closer you got to power, the more you became its prisoner. But the Ottomans weren't alone. In imperial China, the Forbidden City housed thousands of concubines under a similarly brutal system. Some women never saw the emperor in their entire lives. They were kept as possibilities, never touched, never freed. The only time they were noticed was when they fell sick or broke a rule. Many died without a single moment of affection. The emperor's chief eunuchs, often more powerful than ministers, controlled the daily lives of these women. They monitored their meals, their menstruation cycles, even their dreams. Disobedience was punished through ritual humiliation. One practice involved forcing concubines to crawl through palace corridors to beg forgiveness for minor infractions, while other women watched. One concubine was made to wear a necklace of bells and crawl for an hour each day for a year after she allegedly looked at a prince with affection. She later hanged herself with her silk sash. Her body was burned without ceremony, her name erased. These stories aren't just footnotes. They are windows into how pleasure was weaponized, how beauty became surveillance, and how sex turned into a system of control. The harem was supposed to be a place of intimacy, but it was designed as a tool to test obedience through emotional torment. Even in the Mughal courts of India, while poetry and art blossomed in public, the Zanana, the royal harem, was ruled by unseen brutality. There are recorded incidents of jealous queens blinding. In the last chapter, we saw how harems cloaked in gold and silk became prisons of fear, silence, and ritualized torment. But not all women accepted this fate. Some concubines, queens, and mistresses turned their suffering into strategy. They mastered the language of shadows, and from inside these velvet cages, they rewrote the rules of power, using the very system meant to break them as a weapon of revenge. One of the earliest and most chilling stories comes again from the Ottoman Empire, the tale of Harem Sultan, also known as Roxolana. She was a concubine of foreign origin, kidnapped from what is now Ukraine and brought into Sultan Suleiman's harem. Like hundreds of other girls, she was trained to be silent, obedient, and beautiful. But Harem was different. She had no powerful family, no allies in the court, just her intellect, survival instinct, and an unbreakable will. She quickly rose in rank, becoming Suleiman's favorite, which sparked fury among rival concubines. And the valid sultan, rumors say that a rival named Mahidevran attacked Harem with her nails, tearing at her face, but the attack backfired. Suleiman was enraged, not at Harem, but at Mahidevran. Soon after, Mahidevran was exiled, and Harem's rise became unstoppable. She broke centuries of tradition by marrying the sultan, an unthinkable act. She began participating in political correspondence, influencing foreign policy, and even writing letters to the Polish king. But her greatest political maneuver was in eliminating threats to her sons. According to some historians, Harem orchestrated the death of Prince Mustafa, Suleiman's most capable and beloved son, from another concubine. Letters, whispers, and planted rumors led Suleiman to believe that Mustafa was plotting rebellion. The result, Mustafa was strangled by royal guards, likely under Harem's influence. This was not love. This was strategic assassination inside the golden walls of the harem. And she wasn't alone. In imperial China, the Forbidden City gave birth to one of the most feared women in Asian history, Empress Dowager Cixi. Cixi began as a low-ranking concubine of Emperor Shang. She bore him a son, a move that changed everything. When the emperor died, the court planned to install a regency council, excluding Cixi completely. But she refused to vanish. With the help of palace eunuchs and a few loyal nobles, Cixi orchestrated a palace coup, forging edicts and staging a surprise armed takeover during a ceremonial meeting. The regents were arrested. Some were executed. She installed herself as co-regent and ruled China from behind the curtain for nearly 50 years. But her rule wasn't just strategic, it was punitive. Cixi never forgot the insults and humiliations from her earlier days. She forced rival concubines into spiritual exile, had some confined in isolated towers, and according to some sources, even ordered the execution of a former empress by having her thrown into a well. The well still exists today. A reminder of how far a humiliated woman can go once she holds power. And then there's the Mughal Empire, where a lesser-known concubine-turned-queen named Zip bin Asa, daughter of Emperor Aurangzeb, used poetry to express her rage and defiance. Locked in the zenana, she was denied marriage, forced to remain unmarried and under surveillance, likely due to fears that she might form political alliances. Her poems, written under the pen name Makfi, the Hidden One, spoke of spiritual rebellion, emotional agony, and burning fury. I drank the blood of silence in golden cups of grief. Eventually, she was imprisoned by her own father in the Salamgarh fort, where she continued to write for decades. Though she never used swords or poison, her words became weapons, challenging the system that silenced her. But some harem women chose a different path: destruction. In Persia, one tragic tale tells of a concubine who, after being tortured for refusing the Shah's command, burned down the entire wing of the harem using scented oil lamps and silk drapes. She died in the fire, but not alone. Several attendants and concubines perished with her. While many dismissed it as madness, some whispered that it was an act of revenge through self-immolation, a statement that they would rather die than continue being property. In France, during the time of King Louis XV, the king's obsession with younger girls led to the creation of the infamous parco serfs, a private house where underage girls